So Birds of Prey has been released into theaters. That means it's time to talk spoilers. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Sean, and I started this channel because I was driving everyone around me crazy talking about movies way too much. If you can relate, you're probably in the right place. Consider clicking that subscribe button. This is a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen the movie, go watch the movie, go watch my non-spoiler review, then you can come back, join in on the conversation here. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your take on the movie. It's a spoiler review. You can spoil away. Do not worry about putting any spoiler warnings because the title, the thumbnail are all spoiler warnings. So go ahead and dive into all the details that you want. Also, down below in the pinned comment, I will kind of have some time codes. So I don't know how long this review will be. I tend to go long in spoiler talk, so it might be like 45 minutes, an hour long. I don't know. I haven't recorded it yet, but I'll have the time code so you can skip ahead to specific subjects that you might be interested in. I'm going to follow the same outline as my spoiler-free review, so the points will be down below if you want to know specifically what I'm going to talk about and skip over some things you're not as interested in. One final thing before we get started. A couple days ago, I launched a podcast that if you kind of like this more informal version of me talking about stuff, definitely check out my podcast. There's the video version on my channel, and then right now it's on Spotify, and I'm working to get it on iTunes, Apple. But like this week, we talked about the DCEU for about 30 minutes, what we love about it, what we think went wrong, when will it catch up with the MCU, a bunch of stuff like that, our deep cut recommendations. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can check out the video version right up here, and hopefully very soon you can find it on all of your favorite podcast distribution locations. With that said, let's get started. First thing I want to talk about is the movie came out last night, and I actually went to go see it with a group of my friends, but it was displayed or released publicly, so we're now getting kind of the first reactions to people, and what I'm noticing is it seems like a bunch of people like really enjoyed it, thought it was a total blast. I fall into that category. And a bunch of other people were just like, for all the energy, for all the action, for all the style, I just found myself bored. Like I've heard a lot of people say the word bored, and those seem to be the two words, fun, total blast, and bored, which is really interesting to me that a movie like this would be so polarizing in that particular way. And that's like, walked out of the theater the first time I watched it, and some of my other friends were at the screening, and one of them said that, like, yeah, for everything going on, I was just bored. And then thought that was just him. Maybe he's the squeaky wheel. Maybe he's the one person that didn't like it. But then getting on Twitter last night, I saw that same exact word repeated an awful lot, which is absolutely fascinating to me, the way that some people watch a movie and they just get wrapped up in this hyper-energetic adventure, and other people are like, it's too chaotic, it's going in too many directions, and so I just didn't feel connected to it. So as much as it tried to put icing all over the cake, I didn't like it. It was still bland to me. So tell me your thought down below. Were you in that one that just thought it was an absolute blast? Or were you someone that was like, for all the energy, I was just bored by the movie? That stuff is so fascinating to me, the way that can happen. And I'm also seeing people kind of having the things that they're not liking about it are kind of all over the place. Like one of my friends, a 1 Minute Movie Critic, like he really didn't like it because Batman didn't show up. And that's such a plot hole for him that we're in Gotham and Batman never makes an appearance, is barely only the slightest of references to him. In which case, why would he not be involved in all of this if everyone else knows about what's going on with Harley? Where's Batman? It's a good question. And so people are falling. It's a lot more polarizing than I was expecting. And then, of course, there's the side to it, the political aspect, where people like, it's a movie where all the guy characters are awful and the girls are the heroes. It's got a political agenda. If you're looking for that, you can find that in this movie, because having seen it twice now, all the guy characters are they're not good. They're all bad guys. They're all wimps. They're all, take credit for things, or they betray Harley Quinn. There's some validity to that criticism. So it's just interesting to me the way that people see the same thing fall so differently for such different reasons. I went into the movie very skeptical. when I started this channel, WB was just announcing projects and leaking projects left and right. And so at one point in time, they were talking about Gotham Sirens, Birds of Prey, Joker and Harley Quinn, Joker movie. And it's like, what on earth is going on? And most of those kind of disappeared. And then we did get the Joker, the one that we got last fall that might win Best Picture. And then this one finally comes out. And this one just, I didn't get the concept of it. The idea that it's a Birds of Prey movie starring Harley Quinn doesn't seem like a very good idea to me. Superficially speaking, trailers didn't look very good. Trailers don't sell the movie well. Even some of the musical choices misrepresent the tone of what they're going for. The still images looked very campy and corny. Even the way they cut some shots in the movie have the exact opposite vibe of the film. In particular, there's a leg break sequence early on in the film where the driver gets his legs broken. The way that's cut in the trailer, she jumps on the legs and then it's like does this zoom in thing on his face. So it just comes out very campy in the trailer. In the movie, everyone in the audience goes, "Oh!" And it's like this shock and awe thing, but it's cut differently. So you have a totally different reaction to it. One of them is the one that you're supposed to feel, which is like, oh, this is a brutal rated R violent movie. And the other one is like, oh, come on, are we going for the 1960s Batman? So I was skeptical going into it. And the movie itself won me over. I loved the kind of chaotic energy of the entire thing. Anyway, with all my preferences of the odd discussion surrounding it, let's get started talking about the good. So the first thing to talk about with the movie that I really enjoyed was the nature of the storytelling. So the movie's told by Harley Quinn as an unreliable narrator. So some people watch the movie and it's like, there's like a lot of logical flaws here. Like if you drive a truck into a chemical plant, fireworks don't shoot out of it. Wait, Harley Quinn it goes full Terminator on a police station with beanbags and confetti and nobody draws their guns to shoot back at her. Like she just takes them all out. The big final fight, none of the guys land a single blow. And those would be very valid criticisms in most movies. But this entire movie is told from Harley's perspective, which is not reliable. It is this cartoon version of reality where she can do all these flippy kicks and no one can land anything on her. And so you have to interpret a lot of this through the perspective that it's all through her mind. That is what you're watching. And her mind is hyperactive. It jumps all over the place. And therefore you have this nonlinear narrative that plays out. And I really enjoyed that about the film. And watching it a second time, certain confusing plot points are clarified. Because when you're first watching it, it's cutting around so much, you're like, where are we at? Watching it the second time, I could follow it a good bit better because I knew what to latch onto and what details to be looking for. But so a lot of people before I saw it mentioned Deadpool as a point of reference. And one of my friends, Griffin from the podcast, he said Tarantino-esque because it's Pulp Fiction, non-linear. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I was looking for that when I watched it. And for me, it was actually more like Guy Ritchie. And if Guy Ritchie's Snatch has a plot line about guys trying to grab a diamond, there's all these intersecting storylines where it shows something and then it rewinds and shows it from someone else's perspective. And you see how the storylines intersect. There's a plot line about a dog eating the diamond and they have to cut the diamond out of the dog. Like there's some stuff like that kind of takes place in it. What happens in this movie, a diamond is a big plot point. Girl eats the diamond, discussion about cutting it out. All of that's in the movie Snatch. Like those discussions are all in the movie Snatch about a dog. Intersecting narratives where you see something, it rewinds, you see it from a different perspective, the way it plays out. So if you haven't seen the movie Snatch, or if you haven't thought about this, there's a lot of kind of overlap. That's why I've been a little bit surprised by some of the people that love the movie Snatch that didn't enjoy this movie, because to me, that's one of the things that was so neat about this, that it is kind of this, it's such the style of how Harley Quinn would tell a story would feel like this, but also reminded me of like movie like Snatch. The Deadpool comparisons are all entirely fair. It's irreverent, it's non-linear, it's hyperactive, it's rated R, it's vulgar at times. All of those are very much like Deadpool. So this feels like this great synthesis of Harley Quinn plus Deadpool plus Snatch, put it all together, and it isn't like any other movie I've ever seen. Which, granted, that's why some people won't like it, which is fair. One of the guys I went to go see with it, he goes, this movie to me was like if you go to a new restaurant that your friend's really excited about, and you try something you've never had before. You do something totally different, and you can appreciate everything about it. Doesn't mean you like it, though. That was me with this movie. I can't imagine ever wanting to order this again. It's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Like, he wasn't trashing it. He wasn't like, this was awful. He tried something new. He appreciated all the things it was trying to do. Doesn't mean he appreciated it. Fair enough. For me, especially watching it that second time, just kind of locked in the odd nature of how all this played out. I just appreciated having something so different, so energetic, and having a superhero movie that's told through the mind of Harley Quinn. That to me was a pretty cool deal. And so even thinking through how it played out that second time of these kind of overlapping narratives, it takes what is a pretty straightforward story in certain regards, but has a lot of different storylines kind of taking place in these different characters. By doing this overlapping thing, it allows you to introduce the characters throughout the movie without it feeling like this exposition dump at the beginning. Like, one of the problems with Suicide Squad is the first 40 minutes of the film is literally them, here's this character and where they come from. Here's this character and where they come from. And here's another character and where they come from. And it's just very dull. This one gives you this narrative that you start following through, and then you rewind, introduce a new character, see how they kind of make their way into this story, how some of this stuff matters for them. And I really appreciated that. Now, one of the criticisms some people are putting out there is that because of this, it feels like the movie doesn't really get started for like half the movie. Kind of a fair criticism. I can see where you're coming from, where you could feel there's like a tension you feel when you're watching a movie and you're just waiting to feel like you're going. You're just going forward. And so if you have this movie where you go forward, rewind, go forward, rewind a week, play catch up, rewind even further back, that I can see why for some people they would just kind of feel this, I just wanted to get going. I want to feel the release of just watching the movie, it play forward, the story progress, not just this constant back and forth. I can respect that, though at the same time for me, I just enjoyed the nature of something so different while being entertaining all throughout it for me, that the chaos worked. The nonlinear rewind, different perspectives, the vantage points. As I've said in my other review, it reminded me a good bit of Arrested Development, especially like the fourth season, which was designed to be like each episode shows all these events from a different character's perspective. And there's things about that worked and things that didn't work. But here, where it's just kind of, we're doing that for about an hour, I thought it worked pretty nicely to see all this from different perspectives and keep going back to this nightclub and seeing it differently. I really dug all that. From there, moving along to the cast. And most all the cast I thought were a ton of fun. The obvious one is Margot Robbie in the lead as Harley Quinn, that she goes all out for this. And the movie really does give her a lot to work with, because they dive into her history of like her actual childhood, and that she's processing the fact that she's like her whole identity was in someone else. So she's figuring out how to live on her own while being this cartoon character at the same time. And they're allowing the cartoon to fade away just a little bit to see the human inside of that, to humanize this character that is ridiculous, over the top by nature, but it has those moments where she has the realizations and you get to see her act while trying to do broken person, trying to hold it together while being the cartoon at the same time. And she's doing all of that and absolutely, I think, pulls it off. And she can do the funny stuff too. And the other great thing with the character is how much just cool action she gets, and that they give her this style that fits Clown Girl, to where whether she's shooting a gun, whether she's swinging a bat or throwing kicks, it all feels like what Harley Quinn would do. It's hyper stylized. It's all kind of goofy by its nature. It all looks really cool. And it's not, Batman blunt force taking people out. It's these cartoon-like behaviors and acrobatic behaviors with cool flippy things and twirling all around. that makes sense for her to do. And at the same time, knowing that she's the one telling the story, so she's making the story play out where she is kind of this incredible fighter doing flippy kicks everywhere and taking out a police force with confetti shells or whatever they were. I just enjoyed all that about the film. Other standouts here, Ewan McGregor, just going for just this weird guy that gets grossed out by snot bubbles and dirt and other stuff and keeps doing like, ew, and actually gets grossed out by stuff, and he's going for it. And especially when the last time we saw him was in the movie Dr. Sleep, that's just such a serious performance, and then this one is so, by its nature, intentionally flamboyant. I thought that was just a lot of fun. And at the same time, they make the character just terrifying. The big standout scene for that would be, they set it up early on where he sees the snot bubble. He's like, nah, just cut her face off. I changed my mind. You're like, oh, this guy, this guy's insane. And then the one where you get the terrifying nature is the dress cutting sequence that, I heard some people, most things in the movie seem to be pretty divisive. Like, bunch of people love it, and then there's that handful that was like, I just did not enjoy that at all. And I don't think you're supposed to feel that in the moment. You're supposed to be in this scene, and you get incredibly uncomfortable really fast as he gets crazy, and then you're laughing, it's kind of funny, and then it's like, okay, you're feeling the tension, and then it very much so goes way over a line. As soon as he's like, take off your clothes, and you're feeling how wrong this is, and then he gives a nice to someone and says, cut it off, and you just like so fast want to crawl in a ball at how dirty what's taking place is, and you hate him. And the joke, the part that was kind of funny 1 minute earlier is now just the darkest, grossest moment in the film, in a film where we saw a guy cut off people's faces. I take that and I go, that's great directing that we were able to so quickly get to a place that's so dark. That's what it was supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to feel. And it doesn't get exploitive. It doesn't go in the direction of she's actually on the table naked. Like, it doesn't fully go there. In fact, in regards to things, it's pretty modest. You barely even see her really exposed, even though her dress is being cut off. But you feel all the violation in that moment without needing to actually exploit the moment at the same time. I thought that was incredibly well done and communicates how messed up this character is. The other character in this one that I think works so nicely is Victor Zsasz, that 1-2 pair, the two of them, their dynamic of, you've got this crazy unhinged guy and he's being provoked constantly by Victor, who's trying to feed into all the crazy, because he knows if this guy goes crazy, he gets instructions to cut faces off. So even in this dancing scene, right before that, Black Mask, Ewan McGregor goes, wait, is she laughing at me? And one of my favorite moments in the movie, he goes, yeah, she's laughing at you. And he just like whispers that in his ear to like antagonize him, to go all out. And so it's funny, and that almost sets up the darkness of it, because you're just laughing, and then immediately like, oh, he's feeding him up, like, agging him on. That's kind of funny. And then immediately you're like, oh no, I don't want this to go any further. I want this to stop right now. Once again, that's what I loved. Like, that's why I think it was so well done, is because it does such a great job of building that kind of tension there as you're watching it. But throughout the whole movie, all the creepy little things that he does with licking faces, the looks he gives people, the way he interacts back and forth with Black Mask, trying to manipulate him in certain ways and giving him information at the moment in time where he thinks it will best suit his purposes. And you're just watching this kind of almost a naivety with Black Mask. And even because he lies to him at certain points in time. We never got the diamond. She took the diamond before we even got it. And he's unbelievable. Like, the whole point of everything he's doing is to manipulate Black Mask to allow him to do whatever he wants to do. Loved that back and forth dynamic between the two of them. And just the creepiness of the character. The character's supposed to be incredibly creepy. So he did that quite well. But, Let's try to think other people to comment on. So Rosie Perez as Montoya, that she did a good job. I think inherently the nature of the character is she's supposed to play like a cliche cop in an 80s action. That's the joke. So she does that really well, but I think also inherently that makes the character not, you don't see that and say, oh, she did a fantastic job, because for her to do a fantastic job, it's supposed to be like what we've seen other people do. And I thought she did that well. And the negatives, we'll get to Huntress and some of my issues where I don't think that the gimmick worked as well. So I wouldn't necessarily like praise Rosie Perez for what she did, but she was very good in the movie for what she was trying to do, because the performance fit what it was supposed to be. So I thought it seemed a little bit odd that they had Ali Wong in the movie. She seems high profile enough and funny enough that what they gave her seemed to not make a lot of sense. I'm wondering if there's some stuff that was on the cutting room floor or something like that that had a larger role for Ali Wong. I don't know if that's true or not. I got that vibe that I thought they were going to do more with her, and then it's just like, oh, she's a DA that's serious, and character doesn't use any of Ali Wong's actual skill set. That's kind of weird. Fun little casting in there. The guy that plays the police chief that doesn't ever listen to Rosie Perez's character, he played, I believe his name was X on the show X-Files, or was it X? But he was kind of like the replacement for the Deep Throat character that kind of always informed Mulder or some stuff during the second season. So it was nice to see him kind of excuse me, show up in something like this, and that, you know, he's still doing stuff. But other people in it that I thought did a nice job. I don't know, a lot of the kind of the side characters and stuff just got kind of amusing for what they were supposed to be, so played nice into it. So from there, I'll kind of move along and discuss the action, and I think this might have the best action in the entire DCEU. Just consistently, they had a distinct style that's used in the film for the fights. It's most prominent in the police station stuff. The big finale, it seems like someone different directed those. And I think I heard some reshoots about one of the John Wick guys came in to direct the action for some of these reshoots. And I would assume that's the police station stuff, these specific, very intricately choreographed Harley Quinn moves that you're like, an expert came up with that. And you kind of see that in the finale where there's some flippy kick stuff, but it's not in the same league as what you're seeing with some of those moves in the jail cells and the first part where she's shooting the confetti and stuff like that are just highly specialized stunt work stuff that they did there. But just the way that it has this leg break vibe to it, that Harley Quinn does all these acrobatic moves, all of it has exaggerated reactions from the stuntmen when they get hit, where they just take these hits so hard and do backflips and stuff like that and flip over. Very cool, well-shot choreography that you can see the whole move. It's all in a single shot. There's little details in these moves, whether she throws her bat, it bounces on the ground, hits a guy in the face, flies through the air, and then she catches it. Now they had to do a cut there. I'm imagining that they did a ton of takes and she could never fully, right as it's about to go into her hand, when she pauses like this, then it cuts to it landing in her hand. So I'm imagining they could never nail that last little bit of it. But besides that, all of these shots where they show you it and it's slow-mo, there's rain falling. There's something that makes these shots all really cool, that makes them memorable and stick out, as opposed to like, okay, there was some action in it where she did flippy stuff. It's like you remember these specific things that she did and these specific drop kicks because of the details and the things surrounding it. That's filmmaking. You want to make memorable moments. The action in this one did a lot of that with this hyper stylized fashion. And I think that's somewhat where it ties together with this unreliable Harley Quinn is telling the story narrative. Like, the fights wouldn't be nearly as cool if Harley walked in and she's shooting a shotgun and just killing cops. You can't like celebrate and have as much fun with that. It doesn't have like this look to it. So the fact that it kind of plays into her fantasies and is this cartoonish version of it where she's shooting confetti and beanbags and powder everywhere, that's what makes it so interesting and unique. And then the sprinklers are raining down, so there's water everywhere, hitting cocaine at people, lighting beards on fire, kicking cell phones at people. It's the detail. I mean, I've seen it 2 times and I'm remembering all these specific things that happened in the action. I love that about it. Another important thing about the action is that it's practical stunt work. It's actual stunt work. And another reason that I probably really enjoyed this movie a lot more than other people is that I love action movies with actual stunt work, much as I love big spectacle stuff. But when you watch a movie these days that it's not in front of green screens, it's not CGI, it's people doing stuff. Love it. And so I'm the target audience for all of that. And so then I just ate up the fact that even the finale, it's girls punching guys in the face and a girl on roller skates kind of dragging on a car and little subtle allusions to, the chase in Raiders of the Lost Ark where Harley's on the front and kind of holding on to it. All this sorts of stuff all played through the ridiculousness of she's doing flips on the top of the car then. But it's stunt work. It's not big spectacle. It's not CGI. It's not CGI armies. It's stuntman and either Margot Robbie or Margot Robbie stuntwoman doing actual stuff. And I very much appreciated that. And it's brutal R-rated action where you get plenty of leg breaks that make you it's just nasty stuff that I love it when they do things like that in action sequences. And kind of find a little bit on the positives here was that it's a movie that I found it funny. I've heard some people say some of the jokes landed flat. It didn't work for them. That's humor. It works for some people. It doesn't work for other people. If you like this kind of irreverent, self-referential humor that's kind of ridiculous over the top, it worked for me. So I dug it. And it plays in several different ways, whether you're talking about just the idiosyncrasies of Ewan McGregor's black mask going ew randomly, or Victor whispering into his ear trying to get him to respond to things, or just the chaos that is Harley Quinn, just the Montoya having to grab a shirt from the Lost and Found and it's wildly inappropriate. There's a bunch of different things that they do that kind of all work for me. From there, let's move on to the mixed aspects of the film. So as I talked about in my spoiler-free review, the movie shouldn't be called Birds of Prey. They do not come together as a team until the third act. Like, you are in the climax of the movie and then they team up. We've been following, especially watching the second time, the movie's like 50% Harley Quinn and then 50% everyone else. And so you're spreading their story, and they're not together. So it doesn't feel like them as a group. You just feel them as a bunch of side characters. And then they team up behind Harley Quinn in the third act. That's not a Birds of Prey movie. It's not. And then after the finale, during the epilogue to the film, Harley Quinn's like, and then they formed a group called the Birds of Prey. They are literally not the Birds of Prey until the final 3 minutes of the movie. The final 3 minutes. So calling it Birds of Prey, it's a weird choice. Birds of Prey, I don't think is nearly as well known to the general public as Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn as a character has become very popular. Birds of Prey, if you know DC Comics, you know the Batman universe, you of course know Birds of Prey, but Harley Quinn, almost everyone knows the character. She's incredibly popular, and Suicide Squad only amplified that as she was in that movie to the broad audience. So even the fact that they called it Birds of Prey instead of calling it Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey is just a weird decision. I don't know if there's an interview out there where they explain why they did that, but it doesn't make any sense that it's called Birds of Prey when it's very clearly a movie that's primarily about Harley Quinn. She's the one that has this arc about learning to be on her own without Joker in her life and not having that person that she's latched onto. She's the one narrating it. It's from her perspective. So I do not understand the idea of calling it Birds of Prey as opposed to Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey. A couple other things I mentioned. The trailer had some jokes in it. Watching it the second time, one of the ones I thought was cut was there, so maybe I was wrong about that. But definitely, the end of the first trailer shows an extended version of Harley Quinn and Cassandra Cain riding in her car, and there's this whole discussion about the use of the word bitch and when it is and isn't appropriate. That's not in the movie. And I thought, maybe did I miss it the first time? No, it's not there. There's like a line of dialogue in the broad and stuff like that. Like there's this whole little thing about what you can and can't call them. The way it plays out in the movie is someone's chasing them, and then it cuts to Frida Kahlo looking person, hands her the stick of dynamite. She goes, "Who did I kill?" But then all this dialogue about what you can and can't call girls, not in the movie. So I haven't gone back to try and see if there's a lot of that or if there's just one or two things, but there's definitely jokes that were cut. And then the post-credit scene is not a scene, it's just a little joke that it's almost frustrating when they do these sorts of ones that it like gets a little giggle. It's like, hey, you stuck around at the end. Well, since you stuck around at the end, let me tell you, Batman, and it cuts off. You got a little giggle. They kind of already did that in Spider-Man Homecoming, where they did a better version with Captain America talking about patience, and you stuck around patience. It's a much better joke that plays into something into the movie as opposed to like, we literally just had Margot Robbie go, "Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. Because of that, I'm going to honor you by saying," and then it doesn't say anything. You got me. The joke's on the audience. You got us. Not all that satisfying now. From there, let's move on to the bad. So I watched it a second time last night, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, and I tried to pay attention to if my negatives still kind of held up. Obviously, everything about the movie, like my positive negatives, did I have changing opinion on any of it? For the most part, everything kind of felt the same. The stuff on the chaos of the story being a little bit confusing, that was one of my negatives, is that at times you can lose your place. Especially first viewing, you're watching through it, and kind of out of the blue, Harley Quinn shows up at the police station dressed up, and you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't line up with where I last saw her. Wait, how did she show up here? Weren't there people pointing guns at her? And then she does this cool action sequence. She walks into a room, points gun, pulls trigger, and then it rewinds a week. And it does about a 30-minute rewind. Like it goes way far back. And I think this is where a lot of people got frustrated with the story, because it felt like the story starts to progress. We're getting on the action. There's this diamond, and then it rewinds a lot. So it kind of feels like the story slows to a halt. And I don't know that it fully I don't think the scenes slow down, but because you lose that momentum of moving forward, you can have that sense of it slows down a lot when it does this rewind, and we learn about Black Canary and the diamond and all this stuff. So then it does this big, gigantic story, and as you play through it, it lines up with a couple different points in time in the story where you go, oh, is that where we're picking up? No, I don't think so. And so when you finally get to the point in time where we're back to Harley at the police station, it almost gets confusing back again of like, okay, you just informed me on everything, but what was she doing? Oh, we didn't know what she was doing. That's what all of this is about. And watching it the second time, it clears all that up because you know what you're paying attention for and how it plays together. So that cleared that up for me. But as a first viewing, definitely the rewind, fast forward. When you do one that's that long, I didn't time it, but it's certainly over 10 minutes. It's probably 20 or 30 minutes long. You're gonna get confusing at that point in time to try and track with when things are at and whys and what am I supposed to remember. That's a problem. Other big issue I had with the movie, the first viewing, is that Ella J. Bosco, Cassandra Cain, and then Mary Elizabeth Winstead, I thought were kind of the weak links in the film, and I still felt that way. A lot of it, Cassandra Cain was fine, and I'm not saying she's awful bad. She's not like a distractingly bad. But as soon as Harley Quinn rescues her, we have kind of like this 10-minute where they go shopping and then they're back at her apartment. And just a lot of the line delivery, it's not on the same level as the rest of the cast. And when you're next to someone like Margot Robbie, who is this A-list talent in a role that she seems made to play, that she's, it's her second time through it. She's all in on this. And then you have 12-year-old actress, you see the 12-year-old actress in her. They're just, some of the line deliveries just felt off. It didn't hit right. And so rewatching the second time, prior to the breakout of the jail, I hadn't noticed it. So I was like, oh, maybe it was too hard. And as soon as they're in the car and, where's the diamond? I don't have it. it just didn't, I wasn't as convinced, it didn't have that spark to it. It didn't have the magic that you see in a lot of the other performances. She's a child actor. This isn't a big criticism. I did think she was a weak link. And then likewise with Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Huntress. So the joke with the character is that she hasn't got her tough guy down yet. She can do the shooting of arrows. She can kill guys. She's a great fighter, but her delivery of her tough guy lines, her movie lines that she's trying to deliver, she's still practicing it. And so when it does that and she's in the mirror and she's like, I am the Huntress. That worked. But other stuff about it, it didn't match, I think, some of the other stuff. It felt out of place. And there's, like, in the middle of the finale, there's a part where she's like, they do this, she has rage issues bit where she's just like yelling. And I was like, this just doesn't work. Like, she's just, there's nothing about her performance that anybody could give this performance, because she's not disappearing into the role. She's just a person overacting. And that's kind of what's supposed to be happening, but you're not buying it. I didn't buy it. Whereas Ewan McGregor doing he's doing these big dramatic over the top type things. Of course, Harley Quinn, everything she does is over the top, but she disappears into it. So you believe this ridiculous character, whereas her just screaming about bows and arrows, and it's a crossbow, it's not a bow and arrow. It just felt like she overcooked it rather than she disappeared into this character that's trying to figure things out. There's a very fine line between inside of that, and I just don't think she hit it. I think it felt like someone else probably could have gotten better, or whatever direction she was given, she just missed it. And so I thought that those two were the weak points in the film. And not that everything they did was weak. When she's throwing punches as Huntress, she worked. When Cassandra Cain's stealing stuff, it worked. But their line deliveries, I thought, had the highest percentage of lines that fell flat, that didn't work for me. And when you're next to Ewan McGregor, Margot Robbie, whoever the Chris Messina doing the Victor Zsasz stuff, it highlights how far off it was for me when so many other people nailed doing over the top. So anyway, those are my negatives on it, and kind of specifically what it was. Rewatching it, I think there's maybe is some validity to the structurally they went so chaotic with the narrative that maybe I guess I've already talked about that. I can understand where a lot of people are coming from, but just not getting into it, like appreciating all the energy, but the end result is I was bored, or I didn't enjoy it. I think I can understand that. As it went along for me, I enjoyed the first half, and then I got really into it on the second half, and I thought it paid off well. So, I just had a great time with it. It was just a fun movie for me that delivered on great action, giving a villain that's not trying to blow up the world or anything like that. He's not the guy that is the physical threat himself, but there is a threat. So some of that stuff being different. It's not about the end of the world. It's not about saving the world. It's not even about saving the city. And all those details made me appreciate this new, different thing inside of the world of the DCEU in this genre, and just appreciated that DC is doing distinct, different stuff. The criticism of Marvel is that all of it feels like the brand. And the brand is a very distinct style, tone, storytelling fashion. And a few of the guys can cut through a good bit with that, but there's a lot of validity to saying that there is a distinct MCU polish on the whole franchise. Everything Marvel Studios feels very distinctly Marvel Studios. And I think DC is very wisely doing the opposite of that. And they're saying, we're going to give a lot of freedom to our directors these days with these DC properties. And they're not going to feel like DCEU movies, though they're in the same continuity. Or, even throw Joker into the mix. It's not in the DCU. It's not in that continuity. But we're going to tell DC stories, and we're concerned with telling a good story in and of itself with a distinct tone. And we're not concerned with what's going on down the street or the tone, or each director gets to tell his story. So Shazam is absolutely nothing like Birds of Prey. And neither one of those are anything like Aquaman. And then Joker is wildly different from all of them. The last 4 movies that they've done that are based on DC properties are nothing alike. 3 of them are even in continuity with each other, and they're nothing like each other. But I've given all of them positive, glowing reviews. They've all successfully done what they're supposed to do for me. And because they're all very different, the brand is not as polished as the MCU, and they're a lot more polarizing. A lot of people didn't like Aquaman. It's too campy. A lot of people thought Joker was just Scorsese light. Some people aren't liking Birds of Prey. And I think that's not a bad thing. That Marvel is trying to create a brand that has very broad appeal. And that's what they've done. All of their movies are fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. That doesn't mean that they're all great movies, but they all have broad appeal that are easily likable. And DCEU is saying, we're going to give you much more distinct things that are more for a niche audience. The budgets aren't as big. Shazam, this one, budgets are about 100, or Joker, budgets on all these movies is a lot smaller, so they don't need to make as much money. They don't need to appeal to everyone. They're for a targeted audience, and I think they're doing that very successfully. They're doing weirder things that are more interesting, not always as successful, but more interesting, and I love that they're doing that. And they're making movies that you might hate, and eventually I'm going to hate one of them. I tend to like too many things, so maybe I won't hate them. But I much prefer this to them, whatever that monstrosity was that just turned out to be Justice League, where done by committee to try to appeal to the broadest possible audience, and it didn't work. These ones are working for me. Anyway, there you have it. That's my take on it. Remember to check out the podcast if you want more of kind of this free form, me just talking about stuff, giving my specific thoughts, interacting back and forth with other people. This week's episode, we talked about what we thought went wrong initially with the DCU, why we think it's working now, and when they will catch up. I mean, it was like a 20, 25, 30-minute discussion. If you've enjoyed this, check that out. It's me with my buddy Film Speak talking about all that stuff. I guess you can check it out right over there. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.